Hi everybody, welcome back. It's Liam Naden here again. Glad you could join me for this episode of the podcast. And this episode's a little bit different in that I've got a special guest joining me. Now, this guy is amazing, and what we're going to talk about is something that I've talked a lot about in previous podcasts, and it's also something I go into great depth about in my 2 programs, which I've created to help people really work on their marriage and get their marriage back to where they want it to be. And what it is it's tied up with the title of this week's podcast, which is How Your Beliefs Create Your Marriage Situation. All right, now, many of you already know my story. I just want to lead it into introducing my guest to really telling you why I've got him on the show, because many of you know my story and how I came to be involved in the whole area of marriage coaching and how and why I've created my programs. But just to give you a quick recap, about 5 years ago, I was sleeping on my mother's sofa in her living room, and I had lost everything, pretty well everything I could have lost, including everything I owned, my income, my friends, anywhere to live, and basically all I had was an old car. And it was not only that, but I was in court with 2 ex-wives at the same time. So I was being hammered from all sides. And I suddenly realized in the depth of my despair that the real reason for my situation was that I'd failed to figure out the most important thing of all, which was how to make a relationship or a marriage really work. And I finally understood the truth that nothing has the greater power to make or break you than the quality of your intimate relationship. And of course that's when I went on a quest, and I was determined I've really got to figure this stuff out, because it was the one area of my life I hadn't figured out. So I really went on this quest, and I went on a mission to figure out how do you really create a great relationship? What is a great relationship? And not only how do you create one, but how do you keep it going? How do you make it so that it gets better and better every day? And also, what do you do to fix things when they start to go wrong? And as I've said to you before, I really went to work on myself to find out the answers to all these questions. And one of the things I came across very early on when I was really searching for the answers to all of these questions was a program called Breakthrough to Brilliance. And it was a program created by a man called Richard Luck. And this is an amazing program because it really shows you in great depth what a huge role your own thoughts and your own beliefs really play in creating either a great or a lousy relationship. So I'm actually really delighted now to have, all these years later, the creator of that program, Richard Luck, as my guest on the show. And just to tell you a little bit about Richard before he comes online, Richard, he is a creative life coach and a business coach, and he's literally helped more than 4,000 people to overcome their challenges and to go on and create tremendous professional and personal breakthroughs that they didn't realize were possible for them. And I certainly was in that category. That's certainly what he did for me. And he's the author and publisher of Breakthrough to Brilliance, and also the co-founder of New You Life Coaching. He's a fully certified master NLP coach, a behavioral hypnotist, and a personal results coach. And so he's helped thousands of people to overcome obstacles, and it's a real delight to have Richard on the show with us today. Welcome, Richard.
Hey, Liam, how are you going?
Fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, mate. Thank you for that fabulous introduction. I think that's probably one of the best introductions I've ever had. Thank you so much, and I'm so glad my program was able to help you.
Oh, we'll talk about it a bit later, but it really did make a big difference to me, and I've shared it with other people, and I want to continue to share it with people because it really is, I think, something that could help people in a major way with their relationships. So thanks. And I forgot to say, by the way, that you're just over the water from me in Australia, of course.
Yeah, just across the ditch, as they say.
Yeah, the ditch. Yep. So
that's right.
So we're next door neighbours. I mean, most people in the northern hemisphere seem to think we're right next door, whereas of course it's still a 3-hour flight to get to the closest part. But anyway, it's great. You are sort of the closest neighbour I have in being in New Zealand, so that's great. So anyway, this whole thing about you heard in my introduction, and I'm sure you'd agree with me, Richard, about the role that beliefs and really what you think. One of the things I say to people in my programs, and I've said in my podcasts as well, is that the relationship you have with your most intimate partner is very much a reflection of the relationship you have with yourself. And if you want to change anything about your relationship with your partner, you've got to really change the relationship you have with yourself. And that's about what you believe and what you think and the way you see yourself as well. So just to ask you a question to kick things off, what do you think holds most people back from being successful in saving their marriage or creating and maintaining the sort of marriage they really want to have?
Sure, it's a good place to start. Look, I believe it's because many people completely misunderstand what relationships are.